Welcome to the City-REDI podcast. Today we'll be talking about SME business support in England. Can it be effective, highly visible and respected? I'm Juliane Schwarz, a research fellow at City-REDI, WMREDI, University of Birmingham. And today we are talking to Mart Hart, Deputy Director of the Enterprise Research Center and Professor of Small Business and Entrepreneurship at Aston Business School. Mark, welcome to the podcast. Please, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your role?
Okay, thanks very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast today with you, Juliane. I'm a prof at Aston Business School. I work in the Aston Centre for Growth, which is part of our forward-looking engagement with small businesses in the region as well as nationally, and we can say a little bit more about that later. I'm also Deputy Director of the Enterprise Research Centre, and we just celebrated our 10th birthday last week in the Shard. We had cake, which was nice, but the whole rationale behind the Enterprise Research Centre is to undertake research on SME growth, productivity, innovation, and also look at individual entrepreneurial activity as well. So we do a lot of research, but we're also very mindful of engaging with small businesses, and we actually had a panel discussion on this very topic last week on business support, because I do feel it's a very vital component of what researchers need to be thinking about. So I'm very pleased again to be on this podcast with you, Juliane, on this particular topic. So I suppose if I was to summarize what I do, I am a research academic, small business growth, productivity, but I stand in front of SMEs most weeks delivering support, whether it's for national or regional programs. Help to Grow Management, which I helped design, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses, as well as other programs. So that's me in a nutshell, or a rather big nutshell, I should say.
Brilliant. That's quite a big nutshell, actually, and quite important for our region, isn't it? So I'm very interested in what works in business support. And with your vast amount of experience, what do you think are any methods or approaches that are work particularly well, like incubators, accelerators, knowledge exchange, co-working spaces, business park?
Well, look, I think there's no one silver bullet here to say which is best. I think we have to build an ecosystem of support which gives resources to all of those activities. So, for example, I know that accelerators. I'm doing a lot of work with NatWest at the moment on their accelerator program. It's helping startups, helping them get cash, helping them get on their footing. They work well. My colleague Stephen Roper in the Enterprise Research Centre has done work on catapults, and we've shown that they've been immensely valuable in particular sector support. So look, there's a whole range of support out there, and I think what we're saying is we need to build some sort of continuity across the pipeline. So if we look at people's thinking about setting up, we need to have that support, and accelerators, incubators are great. And universities, I know from, just being in the region long enough that, University of Birmingham, Aston University and other HE institutions, we're very good at galvanizing our students and taking them forward into startup space. But we need to make sure that everything's joined up. And I think that you've mentioned a range of initiatives, and they all play their roles. So the catapults, for example, are about sector support, being very focused on whether it's the green economy, whether it's on digital, whether it's on cyber, et cetera, that they have a role to play. My big bugbear is that for the small business owner to navigate all of that, it's an absolute nightmare. So I think when I look at the evaluation reports, there's not one thing that says, oh, that doesn't work. There's elements of all of those things which do work.
Yeah, we will come back to that later when we talk about highly visible business support. For now, I wonder if you could let us into the success of Aston Business School or Aston Business Support. Some people said it might be the gold standard of university business support.
That's very kind of you to say that, Juliane. I mean, I think that we have been working for the last decade. Well, we started working with Goldman Sachs back in 2010, 2011, and that sowed the seeds of giving us the wherewithal to build a team of people to support small business engagement. So out of that Goldman program, we have our own early stage program. We then got involved in aspects of working with the Small Business Charter, I was invited by Lord Young to develop the small business charter, rolled it out to business schools, and the intention always was to get all the business school community working together. But I think at Aston, we decided to gather as much European money as we could. And I think every HE was in that particular game, and develop our own programs. So we went, we wanted to make a huge contribution in West Midlands and in Birmingham, but also with the Goldman Sachs program. We ran the regional program here until 2015, and then we went into the national program. But I think one of the key things for us was getting the right people to support the businesses in the team. That's a key element. So building that capacity in the university. And one of the problems I think we have and still have is building career progression for individuals who bring in on business support. Basically we get 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts, or the lifespan. This is no way to build a business support ecosystem at all. And I made that point to some very senior people in DBT last week, actually, to say, look, if you want to be serious about this, you got to invest. But Aston did invest. I think that's the point I want to go back to, that, the Vice Chancellor at the time and the Dean at the time, they invested because this is what defines Aston, our business engagement. We have to compete. We have to compete with your university, Juliane, and, we're not Russell Group. We have to find a way of competing on our terms. And our terms is all about business engagement as part of our mission. And I think that's really important. So we had the support to build a team, and that team has grown, and we've got many programs as a result of all of that. But I think, you say we're gold standard. Well, it's not rocket science, really. I think the key thing is we recruit good people to deliver. Our faculty engage. And again, that's a big challenge for a lot of universities. We've got senior people who think, why would I want to turn up and do a workshop with small businesses? I've got a paper to write, I've a research grant to write, etc., etc. We've been lucky at Aston, again, because of the support we've had from senior management, to be able to get our academics who are experts in their own field, whether it's operations or finance, in front of small businesses. That, therefore, means that the businesses themselves, if the academics are good at what they do, then they build confidence in the business leaders to adopt, to actually understand what they're being taught and actually apply it. So the application of it is very good. I'll leave it for others to say whether we're gold standard or not. I do know from the evaluation impact of our early stage program, and indeed the Goldman Sachs program, that we're having tangible results on the bottom line of our businesses. We've changed behaviour quite quickly, and I think that's a testament to how well we do things. But we're not the only business school who know how to do this. I wouldn't want to claim that, but I think so. What separates out Aston? Probably one of the first movers in the small business space over a decade ago to get, in terms of the peer learning, adopting. And again, peer learning is not something Aston's invented. We've just seen the benefits of that.
Just make it better.
Absolutely, yes. Is to make it better, absolutely. This is not something that we've invented. It's something we've actually invested in to make it better, Juliane. That's what I would say.
May I ask about 2 questions? First of all, how did the Goldman Sachs evolved? That's the first question. And the second one, is there any, is it part of the career development of your researcher and academic staff? Is it built into their contract, or do they get other kind of, back for how much time they spend in it?
Well, the last question, we could have an all-day podcast on that one, but let me do the easy one first. In terms of Goldman Sachs, I was doing a lot of work with Nesta on high-growth firms, and they saw my Vital 6% report back in 2009, and they were looking for a university in the Midlands, and they thought of Birmingham, Warwick, Aston, and they ended up in my door. And because of the work I was doing in high-growth firms, long story short, they said, yeah, we'll go with Aston. So that was really work I was doing on high-growth firms, convinced them that, the program would be in safe hands with me. And as a result of all of that, and if you think about when we got a grant from their foundation in 2011, and that enabled us to invest because the university saw we're bringing in significant sums of money. to fund. I mean, we've been funded from the foundation since 2011, so that's 12 years, counting. So the university's backed us, so that's been quite useful to have that there. In terms of career development, I mean, our heads of department, our deans, this is an ongoing battle, Juliane, if I'm honest, because the university, certainly for teaching and research staff, it's all about the ref. I mean, the number of emails I've got already about Ref 2028, I probably won't be employed because I'm that old by that stage, but it's all geared up, and I'm trying to say that there needs to be baked into progression and promotion. And I've sat in promotion committees, and it's not. So I think that, and I talk to my colleagues through Chartered ABS and through the Small Business Charter, and every HE institution in the country has the same problem. And that's until we start taking it seriously and build it in as people's career progression. So it's not just about giving the admin team longer term contracts, it's about getting academics, incentivize them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they won't pay it. Sometimes, well, I don't mind not getting paid, but if you put it into my workload model, great. Certain departments are saying, "Oh, we can't do it." It's a nightmare. And I think universities are best placed to do this, business schools in particular. But if we don't fix that problem, then deans and heads of department are going to say, undergraduate teaching is a priority. That's what pays your wages. That's what's going to be at the forefront of any decision making. So we have an issue there, and it's an active discussion at Aston, as indeed I'm sure it is at your own institution.
It is, and it's not solved yet. So there's still a lot going on. But thank you very much for giving your viewpoint on it. I was wondering if we could move on to the Leveling Up white paper. Yes, in the West Midlands, the West Midlands Combined Authority is in the process of taking over some of the function of the labs, and the labs, as we know, are being disbanded. What is your take on losing the labs? The labs are local enterprise partnerships, and what will be the legacy when they are gone?
Well, I think that it's hard to see exactly what will be missed, to be perfectly honest, Juliane. I was participated in a lot of committees to do with the LEP. And the time of the COVID pandemic, I was on a particular committee which was dispensing money to businesses in terms of helping them pivot. So they had their role, but I think in terms of strategy, when the LEPs were set up as some sort of better than the RDAs, and we don't want to go into have a debate about the RDAs. Though I have to say, I think we're probably on the verge of recreating the RDAs again, to be perfectly honest, in terms of mayors and city regions. I think we're back to where I was over a decade ago. I think the LEPs, there were too many of them, 39 then became 38. I think it was problematic. I think the growth hubs, some are good, some are bad. I think the one that Ian McLaughlin ran in Birmingham, with limited resource. And again, the problem was that the department and European money. So the problem is the funding model was complicated because some of them were all BAYS, some of them were BAYS plus Europe. And who's your master? And it was all about a volume game. And I think that didn't understand exactly what business support was all about. So I think they were underfunded. The LEP didn't have the muscle. There was local authority disputes all over the place, about what do they call them? And it became problematic. There are some great ones out there. I mean, obviously, I'll point to Manchester. I'll point to the northeast as well, which is continuing in some guys, Northeast LEP. But it's sort of the local authorities are getting involved, and now we're seeing, which I think is a major problem, that government's going even more local, giving money directly to local authorities to do stuff, and all of the joining up is disappearing. Big time, going back to an earlier point I was making. So what's the legacy? I don't think we'll be talking about the LEPs very much in the years to come. I think it was a transient way of demolishing RDAs, which I think was a mistake, because that's the level of governance I think we need. We've now created combined authorities with the mayor or not with the mayor. That's the right scale to be doing things. But then all of a sudden, a lot of the shared prosperity fund money is going even more local. So we're now moving into a situation where it's even worse than it was with the MIPS.
Wow.
And it needs some big government decision making to sort this out.
Do you get an impression that West Midland Combined Authority know what they're dealing with and that they are prepared for doing what they need to do?
I worked with them on a review of business support products. We looked at sort of core products and then premium products, and premium products were the ones where they needed to invest the money in. So that's landed. There's some calls going out at the moment. There'll be a high growth call at some stage for a growth program. There's decarbonisation's gone out. There's an investment program that's been, it's been awarded but not publicised. So, and again, it's part of this problem that yes, WMCA get the agenda, they're doing the right thing, but I feel that the problem is the resources aren't being dispensed quickly enough. So I know that in terms of you can't commission a program unless the money's in the bank, and if the money doesn't arrive from central government, then you can't commit yet. And here we are. So we're in this wonderful period of, business support even more needed given the uncertain times we live in. The money's all in. Yes, it's coming, and the mayor has done the deal, but yet programs are being stalled or will have to be scaled down. So I think we are in a situation where we've probably got the governance right, but the resources aren't there. And I think that's a fundamental problem. Growth hubs are continuing. They're being brought indoors. How will they be funded? And be interested. Obviously, it's been brought inside WMCA, which I think is a good thing, more joined up, and therefore it reduces that sort of problem. But I just feel at the moment there's a huge, degree of uncertainty, and that was the conversation I had last week at the conference that. We need to hurry up and get sorted here. But I think the problem is that money's running short, budgets are being squeezed in all departments, and we have a situation whereby we're in the end of an election cycle. And I think we're not going to get any big decisions done within the next 12 months. And if I put my money on it, there's going to be an election before the end of this calendar year, which actually could help a lot, irrespective of who wins. I think it would actually then set the scene for right, we've got 4 or 5 years to get on with stuff. Whereas at the moment, nothing's happening fast. And I think that's a huge insult to the small business community who have actually responded superbly well to the crisis of COVID, the crisis of leaving the EU, the crisis of supply chain disruption, the crisis of cost of doing business. They are resilient, but they do need support.
Of course, and that's what you are engaged in, and our universities are engaged in as well. So, what would you say to the government, to the new or existing government? What do you need to do right now, if possible?
Well, I think the key thing is to there's some things out of the control of the government, and I think the government needs to admit this. That, inflation is beyond the control of this government. For all sorts of reasons. We've had some domestic turmoil last summer, but I don't really want to dwell on that. But we've got some real problems here. So, in terms of business support, I think it's really important that they've got the Help to Grow management program, which I think looking at the early evaluation evidence from Ipsos Mori, it's doing its job. I hope that evaluation evidence will continue into its second year, which we're in the middle of now. It's been scaled back a little bit because of budgetary constraints, and so the targets that we originally had aren't there. I think that one of the things I've been banging on about is that we tend to ignore micro enterprises, and government does nothing for micro enterprises. We saw during the pandemic that the self-employed and the 1 and 2 person businesses were basically ignored because there was too much effort. Whereas, in fact, if you look at the scale of fraud in the larger businesses, it was petty cash what was being worried about for smaller businesses. I think that we need to pay more attention to our micro businesses. They do, in absolute terms, create a lot of jobs. They're important. People tend to think of them as, well, they're not really businesses. Well, they are, because a lot of them are, 2-3 person businesses who are important contractors to larger small businesses, etc. They provide business and professional services. People tend to think of them as not important in terms of what they do, but they're absolutely vital cogs. So we need to do more on that. I mean, obviously, if I had an unlimited sum, I'd just scale up all of the activity, what's being done in terms of the catapults, in terms of what Innovation UK do. The other thing I would also urge the government to think about would be, it's not all the shiny techie stuff. When I look at the data through my research for ERC, I know that growth comes in all sectors. So if you want to create jobs, and we're in a tight labour market, so maybe that's not necessarily an issue. But if you want to create growth, turnover, productivity growth, that happens in all sectors. It doesn't just happen in biotech, fintech, life sciences. So I think there's an issue there that we need to be thinking about. So in short, Juliane, focus on micro enterprises, lean into the support that is already working. And I think there's evidence to show that not just Help to Grow management, but other programs as well. And it's really important that, we do not, even at time of budgetary constraint, and I hope a spending review, an autumn statement will begin to maximise this. But my fear is we're at the end of a government, and I think there's a lot of, end of term feeling in terms of, what we need to be doing in terms of big policy initiatives and business support. It's not sexy enough, but it ought to be, because it's vital.
I agree with you. I agree very much with you, both with micro businesses, because some sectors are completely dependent on them. We did some research on the creative sector. If you take and they had a problem after COVID, of course, when people went out of business, and all of a sudden there were carpenters more available for film set, or it's very interesting. Yeah.
But you see, that's the point, Juliane. People think, it's just a carpenter. Well, yeah, but carpenters are vital if you want to actually have film production in the region. And how often do we hear that conversation? Probably you and I are the only ones today having that conversation, but we get it. And that's vital.
Absolutely. And it's carpenter, hairdresser, how important are they for a set, and if you want to take this as a serious sector, then you have to support that kind of businesses. Also kind of that we need to scale up, if you have enough money, or we have loads of money available, to scale up what we have, because I agree with you, and I hope I didn't misunderstand you, that what we have as business support is actually quite good and quite progressive, very innovative, but they need money. It's not for free. That's what it is, isn't it?
But it's also an issue of awareness as well. I mean, I can't stop myself being surprised, even at this stage, when I know the efforts of the Growth Hub and WMCA and across the country, the Growth Company in Manchester, business owners don't know where to go for support. Yeah. And I just find that shouldn't exist.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to my last question, last big topic.
There you go. I knew there was a segue in here somewhere.
Yes, there was. You wrote a blog, which I found very interesting, about business support in England at time of crisis. And I'm quoting here: "As in Scotland and Northern Ireland, we need a highly visible and effective public policy framework of business support that is respected by the private sector. So what would need to change to make business support highly visible, effective, and most of all, respected by the private sector in England?"
Well, I think, this is something which has exercised me, and I see it in the data as well, because one of the little metrics you may have heard me or read about me promoting is the number of startups that get to 1 million turnover after 3 years, and it's 2%. It's always 2%, except in Northern Ireland, where it's double, nearly 4%. And so we're dealing in small numbers here, but the point is that Northern Ireland in all my adult life, because I grew up in Belfast, and there's been a small business agency. Now, it morphed eventually into Invest NI, but everyone knows about the agency. And they have a campaign, Go For It, for startups, which takes ads out in the middle of ITV programs like Coronation Street to appeal to female entrepreneurs, which I think is a bit sexist. Nevertheless, that's what they do. They spend millions of pounds in advertising. But the point, it's not changed. So you've got Invest NI, you've got Enterprise Northern Ireland, you've got a system at local level which hasn't changed for decades. And therefore, almost by definition, business leaders know where they need to go to get support. And there's client executives in Invest NI and Enterprise Northern Ireland. They're well-known individuals. And it's a small place. I get that. And Scotland's the same. I'm doing a lot of work with Scottish Government at the moment. You've got client executives in Scottish Enterprise. And again, there's the consistency there. Whereas England, less so Wales, but in England, they seem to change direction all the time. And I remember in 2011 when the RDAs were being disbanded and the LEPs being set up, I said, look, can you just let this be the last time we have a change and just see what happens, invest in it and develop careers in it? This is 2012 I was talking, and just see what happens. Longevity, consistency and resourced is important. And what happened? Well, all the LEPs were unequal. Some of them were well organized, some weren't, and it's just been an absolute, the first question was, what's the legacy? And we won't be talking about them. It'll just be a footnote in someone's PhD thesis, in the years to come. So we're now going back to WMCA, Manchester, the growth company. We need to actually make sure that we don't keep changing. But the problem is you've got the Shared Prosperity Fund, the devolution deal that Andy Street's negotiated. Then we've got all the local authorities competing with each other and giving grants for X, Y, and Z. This is a recipe for disaster, and business leaders won't know where they should be focusing on. So I think that we're setting up something to fail. And the point you've raised in my blog was, despite its weaknesses and faults, leave it alone. Don't change it. Keep it simple. Make sure that the business community are engaged in what you're developing. And yes, it's improved. And it's, we've gone from 26 councils to 11 councils in Northern Ireland, but the offers remain the same. There's a pipeline. And I helped them sort of recalibrate the strategy whereby raising awareness, getting people into the pipeline of startup through to scaling, keep it all joined up. So there's improvements to be done, but people know where to go for support. And that's really, really critical. Whereas in England, as I say, I shouldn't be surprised by now, but it's always the case where, we don't know, what's a growth hub do? What's this all about? I mean, when I looked at some of the early stats on growth hubs, 3,000 people had rung the growth hub. I said, yeah, but there's 75,000 businesses in Greater Birmingham. Why does every business not know about you? Why are you not bombarding them? Oh, well, it's difficult. It's difficult because they haven't got the resources and they've only got part-time staff and people keep moving jobs, etc., etc., etc. Oh, this is not a one-hour podcast, Juliane. It really is a fundamental problem that we just can't seem to get right in England.
I agree. And I'm really surprised when I talk to business owners. Just, I meet traders and there's like, have you heard about the Growth Hub? Do you know you can apply for grants? There's no, and I haven't met a single person who have heard about it yet, and I was like, okay. Where do you go to get for your business support? Well, I don't. That's the answer I get. So I like your point. We need to much more visible, and spend the money on Coronation Street advertisement if that works. Why not?
They did an evaluation of it, and that proved to work. Yeah. There was a huge increase in the number of women contacting the call center to find out where they can get a startup program.
Yeah, exactly. And just to make them realize the idea they have, there's a need I can do something about it, and that it's actually the start of a business, the idea, and to move it forward. I think this is quite vital for any kind of innovation processes, isn't it? And it's kind
Absolutely.
of yeah. Well, Mark, thank you very much. That was really, really enlightened, and
this has been cathartic for me. It's great to get these points across and recorded. So I appreciate the opportunity.
And it's really important. I think I understand that government has different kind of priorities, but if they're really serious about like leveling up or supporting businesses about growth, which is in all our interests, then they need to get.
Well, I think the problem is how many secretaries of state for business has there been in the last 12 months? That tells you all you need to know about where business support rests within the current government. The turnover. So it's not just turnover of staff at local level, it's turnover of staff in the departments responsible for funding.
Yeah.
And every minister will come in and they want to say, hold on, don't sign off on that yet. I want to review, which is fine. I get that. That's part of the process, but it does create stasis in the system. And that's not good enough.
No, not for businesses, especially for fast-moving businesses when things have to go quickly, really.
Indeed.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And
not at all.
It was interesting and a real pleasure talking with you. And I hope we'll meet again soon to further to keep this, going and further discuss, what we can do, especially as universities, to keep on the pressure on government and on local authorities. Well, thank you very much, Mark.
Not at all, Juliane. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.